Imagine a group of people, maybe like you or me sometimes, they were tired. Life was hard. They had put their trust in Jesus, but things weren't getting easier. In fact, maybe they were getting worse. There was pressure, maybe from their old religious friends, maybe from the government. They were tempted to give up, to go back to what felt familiar, to what felt safe, to their old ways. This is who the book of Hebrews was written for. It's a powerful letter, really more like a sermon. It doesn't have a greeting like other letters. It just starts talking strongly, urgently. The writer doesn't even say his name. He just gets right to the point. He knew what these people needed to hear. He knew what they were struggling with. And he had one big central message for them, a message that would help them hold on and keep going. That message, Jesus is better. That's the whole point of the book. Every comparison, every warning, every encouragement. It all circles back to this simple, profound truth: Jesus is better. Better than anything they had known before. Better than anything they were tempted to go back to. Better than anything they might be looking to for comfort or security. Think about it this way. These people were Jews. They had a rich history, a deep faith passed down for generations. They had the law given through Moses. They had the temple with its priests and sacrifice. They had angels who brought messages from God. All of these things were good. They were from God. They were important. They were foundational. And now they had committed to Jesus. But perhaps they were questioning if this new way was truly superior. Maybe they felt like they were losing something. Maybe they thought they were abandoning their heritage. The writer of Hebrews knew this. So he systematically, carefully, and passionately shows them that in Jesus they weren't losing anything. They were gaining everything. They weren't stepping down. They were stepping up. They weren't abandoning their heritage. They were seeing it fulfilled in its greatest form. He wanted them to see Jesus as truly supreme, as truly complete, as truly all they needed. Because if they really grasped that Jesus is better, then they would have no reason to go back. No reason to give up. No reason to lose hope. So let's look at how he lays this out. It's a journey through the heart of their faith, showing them Jesus at every turn. First, the writer tells them Jesus is better than angels. Now, this might seem like a strange place to start for us today. But for people in that time, angels were a big deal. They were powerful spiritual beings. They delivered God's messages. The law itself was said to have been given through angels. They were revered. They represented God's presence and power. So to say Jesus is better than angels was a massive statement. It immediately elevates Jesus to a position of incredible authority and glory. The writer quotes from the Old Testament to make his case. He shows that angels are servants. They are created beings. They are ministering spirits sent to serve those who will inherit salvation. But Jesus? Jesus is the Son. God never called an angel my son. God never told an angel to sit at his right hand. Instead, God says to the Son, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever." And he says to the angels, "Let all God's angels worship him." Do you see the distinction? Angels worship. Jesus is worshipped. Angels serve. Jesus is served. Angels deliver messages. Jesus is the message, the very word of God made flesh. He is the one through whom God created the universe. He is the one who sustains all things by his powerful word. This isn't a small difference. This is a fundamental, foundational difference. It means Jesus isn't just another messenger from God. He isn't just a prophet or a wise teacher. He is God himself in human form. He is utterly unique. He is above all created things. He has a higher nature, a higher position, a higher glory. So, if these early believers were tempted to put their faith in angels, or to look to them for guidance in the way they might have previously, the writer is saying, no, look to Jesus. He is so much greater. His authority is absolute. His glory is unmatched. And that should bring confidence. It should bring peace. If the one you follow is greater than even the most powerful spiritual beings, then you are in good hands. You are following the true king. Next, the writer moves to an even more significant figure for the Jewish people, Moses. Moses was a hero. He was the great leader who brought them out of slavery in Egypt. He was the one through whom God gave them the 10 Commandments and the entire law. He spoke with God face to face. He was an unparalleled figure in their history. To question Moses' authority or position would have been unthinkable. But the writer of Hebrews does not disrespect Moses. Not at all. He honors Moses. He says Moses was faithful in all God's house as a servant. That's a high compliment. Moses did exactly what God called him to do. He served well. He pointed people to God. However, the writer then makes a crucial distinction. Jesus is faithful, not as a servant, but as a son over God's house. And Jesus is the one who built the house. Think about it. Is the house more important than the one who built it? Is the servant in the house more important than the son who owns it and built it? No, of course not. The builder is greater than the building. The son is greater than the servant. This comparison isn't meant to diminish Moses. It's meant to elevate Jesus. Moses was a steward, a faithful manager. Jesus is the owner, the heir. Moses brought the law, which was good, but Jesus brought grace and truth. Moses led them to the promised land, but it was an earthly rest, and many failed to enter it because of unbelief. And Jesus leads us to a heavenly rest, an eternal rest if we believe. The writer uses this point to issue a stern warning. Just as the Israelites in Moses' time failed to enter God's rest because of their hardened hearts and unbelief, so too these believers must be careful not to fall away. If Moses was great and yet people still harden their hearts, how much more serious is it to reject Jesus, who is infinitely greater? The message is clear: don't miss out on the rest that Jesus offers. Don't let your hearts become hardened. Don't turn back. Jesus is better than Moses, and what Jesus offers is a more profound, more secure, more lasting hope. So hold on to it. Now we come to perhaps the longest and most detailed comparison in Hebrews: Jesus as the better high priest and his better sacrifice. This was absolutely central to the Jewish faith. The priesthood and the sacrificial system were the heart of their worship. They were how people related to God, how sins were dealt with. This was their access point to the divine. Every year on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would enter the most holy place, the innermost part of the temple, to offer sacrifices for the sins of the people. It was a solemn, sacred, and absolutely essential ritual. Without it, they believed there was no forgiveness, no covering for sin. The writer of Hebrews acknowledges the importance of this system. It was established by God. But he also points out its limitations. First, the Old Covenant priests were human. They were sinners themselves. They had to offer sacrifices for their own sins before they could offer sacrifices for the people's sins. They were mortal. They died. So there was a constant succession of priests. Their work was never done. Second, the sacrifices they offered were animal sacrifices, bulls and goats. These sacrifices could cover sins temporarily, ritually cleanse people, but they could not truly take away sin or make a person's conscience perfectly clean. The need for repeated sacrifices year after year showed that they were not complete. They were a shadow, a picture pointing to something greater that was yet to come. Then, the writer introduces Jesus as our high priest, and he shows in exquisite detail how Jesus is better in every single way. Jesus is a high priest, but not from the priestly line of Aaron. He is a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. Who was Melchizedek? A mysterious figure from the Old Testament, a king of righteousness and king of peace, who was also a priest of God Most High. He appeared to Abraham, blessed him, and Abraham gave him a tithe. What's important about Melchizedek is that he had no recorded beginning or end of his life, no recorded genealogy. He was a symbol of an eternal priesthood, one not bound by human lineage or earthly laws. Jesus' priesthood is like this eternal, unique, not needing succession. And what kind of high priest is Jesus? He is holy, innocent, undefiled, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens. He has no sin of his own to atone for. He doesn't need to offer sacrifices for himself. He is perfect. Because he is perfect and lives forever, his priesthood is permanent. He doesn't die, he doesn't need a successor, he continually lives to intercede for us. Think about that, a high priest who is always alive, always representing you before God, always praying for you. That's a powerful and comforting thought. And then there's the sacrifice. This is where Jesus' superiority truly shines. The old priests offered the blood of animals. Jesus offered something infinitely better, his own blood. He offered himself. He was both the priest and the perfect, spotless sacrifice. And his sacrifice was not temporary. It was once for all. It was a single, complete, perfect act that dealt with sin forever. It wasn't just a covering. It was a cleansing. It didn't just postpone judgment. It removed the guilt. It perfected those who are being made holy. Because of this one perfect sacrifice, we no longer need repeated rituals. We don't need priests to mediate for us. The way to God is open, once and for all. We can approach God directly, with confidence, because Jesus' work is finished. This comparison is meant to bring tremendous assurance to the struggling believers. If they were tempted to go back to the familiar rituals, the writer is saying, why would you go back to shadows when you have the reality? Why would you go back to imperfect, temporary sacrifices when you have the one perfect, eternal sacrifice? Why would you go back to an earthly priest when you have the divine high priest who sits at God's right hand? For Jesus is better. His priesthood is better. His sacrifice is better. And because of this, the access we have to God is better. This leads directly into the next point. Jesus is the mediator of a better covenant. The old covenant, established through Moses, was based on law. It revealed sin, but it couldn't remove it or provide the power to perfectly obey. It had its place. It was a tutor pointing to Christ, but it had limitations. The new covenant established through Jesus is better. It is based on better promises. What are these promises? God says, I will put my laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. No longer will they teach their neighbor, because they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest. For I will forgive their wickedness and will remember their sins no more. This is a profound shift. The Old Covenant was external laws written on stone tablets. The New Covenant is internal God's law written on the heart by the Holy Spirit. The Old Covenant involved a priesthood that stood between God and people. The New Covenant promises a direct, intimate knowledge of God for everyone. The Old Covenant covered sins yearly. The New Covenant offers complete, permanent forgiveness and a promise that God will remember sins no more. And this better covenant is ratified by Jesus' blood, not the blood of animals. And it is a covenant that cannot be broken by human failure, because its foundation is God's grace and Jesus' perfect work. Along with this better covenant comes a better sanctuary. The earthly tabernacle and later the temple were copies, models of the heavenly reality. The Holy of Holies, where God's presence dwelled, was a literal, physical place, but it was a shadow. Jesus, our high priest, entered not into an earthly, man-made sanctuary, but into heaven itself. He entered the true sanctuary, God's very presence, to present his own blood, his own life before God. He opened the way to the real thing, the perfect heavenly dwelling place of God. So, the whole system of worship, the place, the rituals, the laws, all of it is now superseded by Jesus. He is the ultimate reality to which everything else pointed. He is the substance, and everything before him was the shadow. Why go back to the shadows when you can live in the reality? Why settle for temporary measures when you have eternal solutions? Jesus is better, his covenant is better, his sanctuary is better. After laying out all these profound theological truths, the writer doesn't just leave it there. He moves from explanation to application, from Jesus is better to therefore how should we live? This is where the exhortations, the warnings, and the encouragement for perseverance come in. Because Jesus is so great, because he is so superior, it means we have an even greater responsibility. We must pay careful attention so that we do not drift away. If rejecting the law brought severe consequences, how much more severe will it be if we ignore such a great salvation brought by Jesus? He urges them to not become sluggish, but to imitate those who through faith and patience inherit the promises. He warns against spiritual laziness. He tells them to hold on to their confession, to not throw away their confidence, which has great reward. He reminds them of their past endurance through suffering and tells them not to shrink back. The writer gives a beautiful picture of faith in chapter 11, often called the Hall of Faith. He lists heroes of faith from the Old Testament: Abel, Enoch, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. These people lived by faith, often without seeing the full promise in their lifetime. They believed in something better. They looked forward to a heavenly city. They suffered, endured, and kept going because they trusted God. But even these heroes, great as they were, did not receive the full promise. Why? So that they would not be made perfect apart from us. Their stories point forward. They are part of the grand story that culminates in Jesus. And then, the writer brings it back to the ultimate example, the ultimate reason for our perseverance, Jesus himself. Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus is not just the object of our faith. He is the example of our faith. He is the pioneer, the one who went before us, showing us how to live a life of faith and obedience, even through suffering. He is the perfecter, the one who completes our faith, who makes it possible for us to finish the race. He endured unimaginable suffering, the cross, the shame for the joy that was set before him. If Jesus endured, we can too. The message here is profound. Don't give up. Look to Jesus. He has already won the victory. He knows what you are going through. He experienced suffering himself. And he is right there, at God's right hand, interceding for you, cheering you on, giving you strength. The writer further exhorts them to seek peace with everyone and holiness, without which no one will see the Lord. He warns them against bitterness and again against falling short of God's grace. He reminds them of the terrifying nature of Mount Sinai, where the old covenant was given with fire and darkness and trembling. But then he contrasts it with Mount Zion, the heavenly Jerusalem, the city of the living God, where we have come. We have come to countless angels in joyful assembly. to the church of the firstborn whose names are written in heaven, to God the judge of all, to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant. This is a powerful picture of hope and security. We are not approaching a fearful mountain of judgment. We are approaching a joyful heavenly gathering where Jesus is our mediator. We have a kingdom that cannot be shaken. So, because we have this unshakable kingdom, because we have such a great high priest, because Jesus is better than everything, how should we respond? We should worship God acceptably, with reverence and awe. We should show love to one another. We should be hospitable. We should remember those in prison and those who are mistreated. We should honor marriage. We should keep our lives free from the love of money and be content with what we have, remembering God's promise, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. We can say with confidence, the Lord is my helper, I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? And finally, the book ends with a prayer and a benediction, wishing them peace, strengthening them, and asking God to equip them with everything good for doing his will through Jesus Christ. So, what is the purpose of the book of Hebrews? It's really to do a few things, all wrapped up in that central message, Jesus is better. First, it's to prevent apostasy, to keep these struggling believers from abandoning their faith in Jesus and going back to their old ways. It shows them that going back would be a step down, a tragic mistake, because what they have in Jesus is infinitely superior. Second, it's to provide assurance and confidence. If Jesus is indeed so much better, then their salvation is secure. Their access to God is real, their hope for the future is solid, they don't need to fear it out. They can approach God with confidence, knowing their high priest has made the way. Third, it's to encourage perseverance. Life will be hard, there will be temptations and suffering. But because Jesus endured, and because he is the author and perfecter of their faith, they can keep going. They can run the race. They can hold fast to their confession without wavering. Fourth, it's to elevate Jesus to his rightful place, to ensure that believers understand his supreme authority, his divine nature, his complete sufficiency. He is not just a part of their faith. He is the center, the sum, the substance of it all. He is everything. The book of Hebrews is not just a history lesson. It is a passionate argument for the supremacy of Jesus. It calls us to look away from all the distractions, all the lesser things, all the shadows, and to fix our eyes squarely on him. For us today, the message of Jesus is better is just as vital. We might not be tempted to go back to the Old Testament sacrificial system, but we are constantly tempted to put our hope, our trust, our security in other things. We might look to our jobs, our money, our relationships, our accomplishments, our governments, our own strength, or even our religious rituals as our ultimate source of comfort, security, or identity. The book of Hebrews comes to us and says, no. Jesus is better than all of those things. He is a more secure foundation than your job. He is a more reliable source of peace than your bank account. He is a more perfect love than any human relationship. He is a more complete answer than any accomplishment. He is a more trustworthy leader than any government. He is a more powerful help than your own strength. He is the reality that all other good things dimly reflect. He is better than anything you can imagine, anything you can build, anything you can achieve, anything you can lose. He is the ultimate, perfect, never failing, all-sufficient one. So the purpose of Hebrews at its heart is to tell us, simply and directly, don't settle for less. Don't look away from him, don't go back, don't give up. Jesus is better. And in him, you have everything you truly need for now and for eternity. That's a message that really matters. It's a message that brings profound hope and steadfast courage no matter what we face.